Tonight, John Tory bids farewell to City Hall, officially signing off as mayor with some final words to the citizens of Toronto.
More than anything, what I hope is remembered of my time is that I did the work of keeping the city stable and moving forward.
Tory reflecting on his legacy as he hands over his mayoral powers on his final day in office. Plus,
suspects fled, and the suspect vehicle was later located in Peel Region.
Two 17-year-olds are arrested in a drive-by shooting outside a Toronto high school that left a 15-year-old in critical condition. And
there could have been a different response to this unprecedented situation.
The long-awaited report on the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act is now out, with the Ford government getting slammed for its inaction during the convoy protests. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, it's official. John Tory is no longer mayor of Toronto. Tory handing over power to Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey this afternoon with some final words before his departure. It was also his first address to the media since admitting to an affair with a former staffer a week ago.
I've had a number of jobs in my life. I've been a lawyer, I've been a political advisor, I've been a corporate executive, a broadcaster, the commissioner of a professional sports league. These are all fine positions to have, and I was proud to have them. But the career I wanted the most, and the one I was privileged enough to have, was in public service. To me, there is no greater occupation, because it is being part of something bigger than yourself. And for myself, Toronto has been my cause. To work hard and to work together. That's the Toronto way. That's what makes being mayor of the city the best job anyone could ever have. And it's why it breaks my heart to leave. But leaving was the right thing to do, as hard as it might be.
Prior to speaking, Tory had been hunkered down in his office through the day, as he had been for much of the week. Chris Glover has more on how Tory's last day unfolded.
An unflinching John Tory had eggs served cold this morning on his last day in the office of Mayor of Toronto.
How come you did that?
No comment from the egger outside, and no comment from the mayor inside, who arrived again today before the crack of dawn, avoiding the media spotlight all week. What's your opinion on how he's kind of been behaving in the week since he made the announcement and today leaving office?
Definitely really shady. He could definitely do more to reassure people that things are going well.
I feel very sad, to be honest.
Torontonian Tamara Kemage wishes Tory was staying on as mayor. Still, she says it's strange he's been quiet this week, especially with the budget.
He spent the money and now he's like, okay, this happened, now I'm leaving. But what happened? Where did the money go? Why is the budget spent?
It's certainly a departure from the kind of access to John Tory that we've seen throughout his tenure. What do you think about that?
It's pretty clear to take away from his behavior over the past week that this has stung.
Political scientist Meyer Semiatiki says it's a wise approach for Tory personally and for the city to move forward.
There's a reset now and an opportunity to chart a new direction for Toronto, and I think that's a positive thing.
Should he, though, be making himself available, at least on the budget point?
I think the problem is, and we've seen this, that making himself available makes him available for everything.
I think I'll let my statement speak for itself. Thank you.
Tory shocked the city last Friday evening with a bombshell resignation announcement following a report in the Toronto Star that he developed a relationship with an employee in his office. Tory also referred the situation to the Integrity Commissioner. After shepherding through his handcrafted $16 billion operating budget for the city on Wednesday, he announced that today at 5 p.m. would be the end of his time as mayor. Through the day today, various Tory supporters came and went, but they too were quiet with the media. Tory has now officially delegated his duties. The city manager will assume the authority to hire the most senior city officials and the ability to amend the city's organizational structure, while council will assume the authority to hire deputy city managers and the city solicitor. In a letter to councillors, Tory thanked them for working together to finalize the budget. He wrote, "It was a reasonably good example of working together in challenging circumstances." John Tory also released a public statement to the city today. He thanked citizens for the trust that they put in him, and he said that he thinks that the city is in good hands with Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey, who now takes over city business in this office. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And Jennifer McKelvey also spoke this afternoon. She said she burst into tears when she first learned of the scandal directly from Tory, and she was again emotional today.
I think I am a little emotional. I have a lot of respect for Mayor Tory. He's the man that I admire a lot. I admire his sense of duty, his sense of honor. I admire how he's taken full responsibility and how he's resigned. I think he used his heart and he looked to what was best for him, what was best for his family, and what was best for the City of Toronto. And I think that's admirable.
McKelvey says the by-election to replace Tory will be the largest in Canadian history. Council meets at the end of March to officially declare the mayor's seat empty. So what does John Tory leave behind? Well, a lot of unfinished business. He had just begun his third term. Now on his agenda, getting housing built and getting the TTC back on track. Now, his resignation means he won't be able to see those initiatives through. Ali Chiasson takes a look back at his legacy and the things left undone.
What do I want to be remembered for? I know my departure and its circumstances will rank high on some lists. But I do hope that in time, other things will stand out.
The now former Mayor John Tory leaves a lot of promises on the table.
The government is back in the business of getting housing built so that people can afford a decent place to live.
When it comes to housing,
Mayor Tory has an interesting legacy because he was mayor for 8 years, but really the affordable housing move only started at his second term in 2018.
that's when the Housing Now initiative really started, and the city started expropriating land to build affordable housing on. But
we haven't broken ground on any of those sites yet. Affordable housing commitments of the City of Toronto are kind of like New Year's resolutions. We seem to make them every year, but we never went to the gym. We never did the things that we have to do every day in order to reach our targets, reach our goals.
When it comes to transit,
we are finally back to building transit. Many kilometers of new lines that we so badly need to connect people to opportunity.
But not in the form of Smart Track, his crown jewel of campaigns past that was vetoed by the Premier for the Ontario line instead. Transit expert Steve Monroe says Tory's resignation brings an opportunity for,
dare I use the word, vision for what the city might be.
Including getting the financially strained TTC back on track.
You might not be able to afford it like tomorrow, but what is it we're aiming at? What are we trying to be as a city?
Former City Councillor Joe Mihevc gives John Tory his flowers for two things.
In his first term, what was he? He was the antidote to Rob Ford.
Mihevc says he shined in his second term during the pandemic.
Toronto had one of the highest vaccination rates of big cities around the world. And he managed that crisis, I think, frankly, masterfully.
He also says Tory handled the crisis of his third term masterfully, in that he stepped down. So what comes next for the people?
Well, good afternoon.
I think it's quite clear that what we really need is a compelling and bold vision. Really invest in the things that will help catalyze us and bring us into, a new few decades of growth and prosperity, and really spread the prosperity that happens in the city across to all neighborhoods, from your Jane and Finches to Rexdale to Malvern to every part of this great city that we're a part of.
But more than anything, what I hope is remembered of my time is that I did the work of keeping the city stable and moving forward. That I did the work of reaching out to those who share my deep love for this city and try to work with them to make things better.
So as for the man himself, he goes from Mayor John Tory to private citizen John Tory. A lot of people in his inner circle warned him against running for a third term, saying it wasn't going to be in his best interest. And yet here we are with a lot up in the air, including his legacy. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
2 teenage boys are now facing attempted murder charges following a drive-by shooting outside Weston Collegiate Institute yesterday. The victim, a student at the high school, remains in critical condition tonight. Dale Manukduk has the latest.
2 17-year-old boys were arrested and charged early this morning in Peel Region. Police say the 2 accused pulled into the school parking lot at Weston Collegiate in a gray 2022 Hyundai Elantra. The driver then shot a 15-year-old student several times from the car.
Suspects fled, and the suspect vehicle was later located in Peel Region. It's later learned by investigators that this vehicle had been stolen via carjacking earlier in the day prior to this occurrence, once again in Peel.
Investigators identified the suspects along with an address of interest, and a search warrant was executed this morning in Peel.
There were 9mm casings at the scene. The firearm recovered was a 9mm, but there is absolutely no evidence present at this time that is the firearm. That's for further investigation.
The police wouldn't comment if there is a relationship between the accused and the victim, but we do know now that there are a number of charges facing those 17-year-olds, including attempted murder and several weapons-related offenses, and police say there could be more charges coming. Youth violence is something that the community has been trying to address for a long time.
Some of the youths, they need help, they need support. Some of them, because of other youths are threatening them, they're picking up guns. So if we start to educate their minds in the school system, they will think twice.
Toronto's 2023 budget that was passed on Wednesday includes funding for community-based programs that aim to prevent violence. But those running programs say sustained funding is the key.
Investing in long-term solutions, right, is not going to take 1 year, 5 years. It'll take maybe 10. But if we don't start now, if we started back in 2005, if we started in the year of the gun, we wouldn't be where we are now if we had made those long-term investments. So let's not keep making the same mistake over and over.
Meanwhile, the TDSB says supports will be available at Weston Collegiate for students who need them. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The long-awaited report on the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act to end the convoy protests last winter is now out. And the commissioner said the government met the threshold to invoke the measure.
I determined that the measures taken by the federal government were, for the most part, appropriate and effective and contributed to bringing a return to order without loss of life or serious injury to people or property. I also found, however, that in a number of respects, these measures were deficient. These included important aspects of the Emergency Economic Measures Order, such as the absence of any discretion related to the freezing of accounts or assets, and the failure to provide a clear way for individuals to have their assets unfrozen once they were no longer engaged in illegal conduct.
The commissioner said the Liberal government could have avoided invoking the act if circumstances had been different. He pointed to what he calls a series of policing failures. He said different levels of government should have collaborated more, and he was critical of the Ontario government for its reluctance to become fully engaged in ending the protests in Ottawa. He also said Prime Minister Trudeau likely inflamed the situation by referring to some protesters as a fringe minority. But he concluded that while the invocation of the act was a drastic move, it was not a dictatorial one. And the Ford government reacting today to the report's conclusions and criticisms. Lorena Redekop has more on that.
The big trucks and their incessant honking descended on Ottawa in late January last year and stayed for weeks. In today's report, the inquiry commissioner writes that given that the city was clearly overwhelmed, it was incumbent on the province to become involved from the outset. Better political collaboration from the start, the commissioner writes, could also have provided the people of Ottawa with a clear message that they had not been abandoned by their provincial government during a time of crisis. The commissioner says collaboration by police forces and all levels of government was key.
There could have been a different response to this unprecedented situation. It's likely that such preparation could have avoided the necessity of invoking the Emergencies Act.
Premier Doug Ford and then Solicitor General Sylvia Jones refused to participate in tripartite discussions, a source of frustration for other participants, as well as the Prime Minister, the report says. The Premier faced accusations at the time of being missing in action.
I was at the cottage. I went out on my snowmobile. I take calls till 1 o'clock in the morning.
The report says it was only once protesters stopped traffic across the border in Windsor that the province got more involved, with the Premier calling a provincial state of emergency February 11th.
I call it a siege because that's what it is. It's an illegal occupation. This is no longer a protest.
Today, the province defended its actions, saying it provided policing tools needed to bring the situation to an end. Ford and Minister Jones refused to testify at the inquiry, citing parliamentary privilege. As a result, the Commission is at a regrettable disadvantage in its understanding of Ontario's perspective, the report says. The Premier repeatedly said this inquiry wasn't about them.
This is a federal inquiry into the federal government's use of the Federal Emergencies Act.
We're hearing reaction from other political parties at Queen's Park. The NDP says that the Premier and his government turned their backs on the people of Ottawa at a moment of crisis. The Liberals want an apology from the Premier to the people of Ottawa and all of Ontario for what they're calling a dereliction of duty. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A Mississauga landlord says he's fed up with the bureaucratic gridlock that's held up an eviction order for almost 6 months. Joe Roberto is trying to get a tenant removed from a condo that he owns. He says the woman hasn't paid rent in more than a year and now owes him about $20,000.
I stay awake at night, turn the heat down in the house, just economize on everything. Don't have any luxuries, can't provide anything for my wife or my children, nothing. It's a bad situation.
Roberto says he was told at his landlord and tenant board hearing in August that he would soon be issued an eviction order against the woman. He says the tenant moved in 2020 and by October 2021 had stopped paying rent, which is about $1,800 a month. Despite daily calls and emails to the board, the Ombudsman's office and his MPP, Roberto is still waiting. In an email to CBC Toronto, the landlord-tenant board said it understands the impact that delays have on those who access our services. A chilly day outside for those who brave the weather and the freezing rain making for some treacherous conditions on the roads. This was the scene earlier today on the Don Valley Parkway south of the Bayview and Bloor exit. Toronto police also reported multiple downed trees on roads. Some buses in Durham region were also cancelled, but things are looking up for your long weekend. We'll break down the forecast after the break. Stay with us. You are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. Mostly clear skies tonight, and it will be warming up this weekend. But right now, pretty chilly out there at -8 degrees downtown. Let's check on how the weather is shaping up for the weekend with Victor Paolo. Victor?
Couple of key takeaways for this weekend in Toronto. Tonight will be some clear skies, get to see some stars, partially cloudy, but then it's going to be windy downtown tonight. Also for the surrounding regions, going to feel closer to 50 kilometers per hour. There will be some scattered flurries associated with all that, but then when it's all said and done, coming to look for Saturday morning, it's going to be some clear skies and some sunshine. My favorite kind of Saturday morning. Then a bit of a look ahead into Sunday, we'll be expecting more cloudy skies than it was for Monday morning, but then also will be included some above seasonal temperatures. Now looking at the radar to see what we'll be expecting and exactly when. Taking a look at the overnight tonight, it's going to be 11 o'clock, some clear skies, partially cloudy in Toronto. Don't forget, not that much cloud cover means there's no clouds to insulate the heat. No clouds to insulate the heat. That's why it's going to be -9, feeling like -17 at some points overnight tonight. Now when it comes to the morning, what are we going to be expecting? More clear skies to start the day, which means we get to feel that sun and feel that heat. No better way to start a Saturday morning. But as you do get closer to noon on Saturday, it's going to be cloudy, but the cloudy cover, the good news is, will not bring cold temperatures. We're going to be still in the realm of above seasonal temperatures here in Toronto for the majority of the weekend, all the way through until Monday. Now, you do see a system working its way in through to Toronto. Now, when it comes to the morning, a bit of precipitation expected for Monday morning, but what you really have to look out for and mark your calendars when it comes to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Taking a look at the 3 and 7 day calendar, that's when what you'll see will be expecting a little bit more in the form of snow reaching Toronto. Now taking a look at tonight, don't forget it's going to be getting a bit cold, -9 feeling like -17, as well as when it comes to Saturday morning, going to get that sunshine, but you're also going to get the 50 kilometer per hour winds. Now the 3 and 7 day forecast to see what exactly we're expecting, above seasonal temperatures for Toronto. Best way to spend a weekend. But then what you also have on Monday, as mentioned, a bit of precipitation in the morning. But when we get later on for the 3 and 7 day forecast, you got to watch out for that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because it will be snowing. But hey, we've got a whole lot of variety here in Toronto. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Victor. Finally tonight, the Canadian International Auto Show making its return to Toronto for the first time since 2020. It was canceled the last 2 years because of the pandemic. Our Greg Ross was there for the opening of the show today and quickly found out a lot has changed in just a few years.
More than ever before, fully electric vehicles have become a prominent feature at the auto show.
This year, we've got 10 times the number of electric cars that are on the floor versus what we had in 2020.
Auto Show General Manager Jason Campbell says manufacturers taking part in the show are using it to showcase the future of the automobile industry.
The industry's really exploded in terms of every manufacturer that's on the floor either has a product here on the floor that's fully electric or is in development of one.
Consumers not only have the opportunity to see new electric vehicles, they can take them for a spin. For the first time ever, they've installed an indoor track here at the auto show to allow people to come and test drive a number of the electric vehicles that they have on display.
What we've done this year is we built an indoor EV test track. It's a 70,000 square foot track where you as a consumer can come and try out one of 19 different vehicles that are available from 9 different manufacturers.
And that's exactly what Glenn Singh did in preparation of buying his first fully electric car.
Electric is the way of the future, so I'm looking at it. Just haven't decided which way we want to go. It's a perfect opportunity to try different models and see what's going on.
For consumers who have questions about electric vehicles, there's a new electric city where educational talks are taking place daily.
People have these fears and these myths that are out there that, oh my God, what am I going to do if my car breaks down and I'm on the side of the road and I don't have any electricity? Well, that won't happen and it shouldn't happen.
Kevin Lissow is the CEO of Ener Savings, a company that installs infrastructure to support electric vehicles. He says they're installing charging stations in condo buildings, businesses, and in public spaces.
Right now, we're trying to keep up. The infrastructure is trying to build at the pace of EV sales.
In Ontario right now, about 1 in every 10 vehicles sold is electric. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's our show for you tonight and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can get caught up anytime. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto. Shannon Martin has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.